So today I'm going to describe the shell operators that are available to you when you use just the Posix compliant operators, and I'm going to discuss why you should probably prefer these over the bash or the Z shell extensions or any of the other extensions that are available. So if you're new to this channel, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. I'm aiming for 1,000 subs and any help would be really appreciated. So now that's out of the way, let's get started. Good afternoon everyone and welcome back to the channel. So the only operators that we're not going to be going over today are the file operators. One, because I don't have much experience with them myself, and two, because if you're working with files in that way, you probably know enough about how to do shell scripting to actually go and find them for yourself. But today what we're going to be going over are the arithmetic operators, the number comparison operators, the string comparison operators, the Boolean operators, and also discussing basically what the different bracket structures mean and which bracket structures are Posix compliant and which ones aren't, and which ones you should probably avoid using if you want to actually keep your scripts Posix compliant. Okay, so we're going to switch back to my main screen now, and I've got a bit of a script set up. So one thing you might notice is if you have looked at any Posix compliant stuff, you might think that this syntax right here for these brackets, this double brace, the round one, whatever the round one's called, you might think that that isn't Posix compliant. The double bracket isn't, okay, but when you put a $ in front of it, basically what that means is to run an arithmetic expression. So if I was to get rid of this form of the bracket isn't Posix compliant. But I'll discuss a bit later in the video what this actually means. So all you need to know right now is if you run it like this, we can run an arithmetic expression. So the first thing we're going to do is addition. So the arithmetic ones are all very, very basic. You've probably seen all of them in other programming languages. So if we save that, and I've got this in a script already, so we can just run that. It's just called operators. And so 10 plus 6 is obviously going to be 16. The next few are probably going to be pretty boring, so subtraction works like subtraction. It's just a minus sign. Multiplication is a asterisk like it is in most languages. So that does what you'd expect that to do. Division is a / like it normally would be in most programming languages. Then one you may not have seen if you're fairly new to programming is modulus, and that will basically get you the remainder. So if we go A remainder B, so that'll be 10 remainder 10 divided by 6, and then it will give us the remainder basically. And then we also have the option of doing assignments. So you can already see this on the screen right now. So B equals 6, but you can also assign it to a variable. So if we want to assign B to A, then we can go B equals A like this, and obviously we can chain together the arithmetic expressions like you can in any other language, but for now we're just going to do this. So now this should give us a remainder of 0, and as we can see, that is basically the basic arithmetic operators. So I've got my notes up on the other screen if you notice I'm peeking to the side. So next up we have the comparison operators. So I will just clean this up a little bit and we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so I've made this basic structure up so we can actually show what the results of these tests are. Okay, so the first thing that we can do is testing for equality. So if we want to test that A equals B, what we do for here is $A equals, so equals is the equality operator in this language, and then equals B. We run that now, and that will then print out false. So we can also test equality in another way. So if we don't want to use the equals sign, you can also do -equals. So we run that now, because basically these brackets are an alias for a program called test, but that's not too important to this video. So we run that and we get false again here. So we can also test for non-equality. Once again, there are two ways to do this. So you can do !equals, or you can do -NE. So both of those will give you the exact same result. We're going to use !equals for this test, and now that will return true. As we can see, that works perfectly fine. Okay, so now we have the comparison operators for like greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. They are fairly straightforward. Once you've seen the first one, you can probably guess what the rest are. Okay, so you can't use, like in most languages, you can do things like this. Okay, this doesn't actually work within a Posix shell. It might work in some other shells, like Bash and Z shell do support this when you do it in. Okay, so within this syntax, you can do a comparison like this within, say, Bash or Z shell. But if you're in a shell that is only POSIX compliant, you won't be able to do this. So we're going to be using the POSIX compliant operators. Once again, as I said, later in the video, I will tell you why that's important. For now, just know that you can't do that within a POSIX shell. Okay, so how do we do, say, greater than, for example? So we do -GT. So this will return true because 10 is greater than 6. As we can see, works as we would expect it to. Then less than, since greater than is GT, you can probably guess that less than is going to be LT. Very simple. So that is then false. Then we can also do greater than or equal to. So this isn't like a bunch of letters. This is just GE. So greater than, equal, or greater, equal, I guess, would be how you would read that out. And that is true. And then we can also do less than. So we do -LT. Less than or equal to is what I was doing. So you do -LE. And then we run that again. And we get the result that we would expect. Okay. So we also have some Boolean operators. So these will let you do things like nots and ors and ands. So if we just check for equality here, and let's say we do not here instead. So what this is going to do is this is effectively going to be the same as just putting this here. So we run this now, and what should happen is we'll see down here. Now that is equal to true. So A is equal to B. We reverse that result. So what it was false. So we flip that with not, and then we get true. So we can also do ors and ands. So I'll need some extra variables for that. So I will set those up and cut back in a second. Okay, so we have our extra variables. So we'll keep this first part that we have in here. So to do or, we can do -O. And then we can go, let's say we want to compare B and C. So we want to say that B equals C. So this will be true if this part here is true or this part is true. That doesn't mean or as in the way you would normally mean or, it's a logical or. So it's basically the same as and or. So if this is true and or this is true. So this will return false in this case. Sorry, this will return true in this case, I mean. There we go. So we can also do and, which does mean what you would expect and to mean. So this will only be true if this part is true and this part is true. So this will return false. And there we go, we get false. Okay, so next up we have the string operators. So I'll need to change around what my variables are so we can actually test for this. Okay, so we've got our string variables now. So let's say we want to do something like test for equality. So as we can see in here, A and D are equal. So let's just use those for the equality test. So if we do A, and then unlike with numbers, where you could do the equal sign, for strings you just do equals. So it might get a bit confusing occasionally, but just remember that strings are always going to be with the equal sign and numbers are always going to be with the equals. It'll only be a problem if you're changing the value that's in your variable from a string to a number, but if you're not doing that, you're not gonna have any difficulties. So let's compare A with D, and if you have spaces in here, it might cause a problem. So in those situations, you would want to actually wrap these variables within quotation marks. But as we don't, it's not going to be a difficulty, but I'm just going to do it just for the sake of habit, I guess, and safety in case I was to say change these variables to actually have spaces in them in the future. So if we save this and run this now, this is going to be equal to true. And there we go. So we can also do not equal. That is very, very simple. That's actually the same way that you would compare numbers. So if we do not equal, this is going to be false in this case. The other operators we have are unary operators. So they are just operators that act on one thing. So we can do -Z. So -Z, what that will check is if the string is empty. So in here, we've got this C variable, which will actually be empty. So if we switch that to C, so this is true. So this is going to say, is the C variable empty? As we'll see here, that's true. But if we were to use that with any of the others, like say A, that is going to be false. So there's also the opposite of that. You have the not. So instead of Z, you do -N. So -N means, is this string not empty? So for A, that's going to be true. And for C in this case, this is going to be false. There is also the option of checking for strings empty by just using this syntax, so we don't have anything else within the brackets, it's just the string. So this is basically the same as doing -n. So for C, this is going to be false, and for any of these other variables, like let's say B, so that will be true. There we go. Okay, so I did mention a bit earlier in the video about the different bracket formats we have. So there's a couple that are probably well used. You may have seen some of them before. These are pretty much all of the standard sort of brackets. Some of them are not going to be available in every shell, and that's the important thing. And there's going to be others that I don't have in this list that maybe you've used before. Like there's the curly bracket syntax that some shells support. I don't have that on the list that I'm going to discuss, but basically these are the general ones that most people know about. And we're going to talk about which are POSIX compliant, which aren't POSIX compliant, and from that, also talk about why POSIX compliance is actually important. Okay, so this syntax right here that we've been using for the if statements, this is POSIX compliant. This is basically just an alias for a program called test. So there's another version of this that you might have seen within bash programs or Z shell programs that looks like, this, which is the double brackets. This isn't POSIX compliant. This is an extension added to K shell and a bunch of other shells. It does pretty much the same thing with the option of also supporting error codes. Sorry, not error codes, I'm thinking of C. Exit codes is what I'm thinking of. It does basically the same thing, but it isn't supported. So there is also a arithmetic one that you might have seen before, which is the double circle bracket braces. Those ones, the double braces. So this will let you do things like, say, $A less than $B. I think there needs to be those spaces though. That will let you do things like that, but this isn't also a POSIX compliant format. It is supported in things like bash, so most things are going to be fine. This is the thing about POSIX compliance. If you're only ever going to be running on a system that uses bash or something else that does support a similar sort of bash syntax, it's not going to be a problem whatsoever. So if you want to use bash and then you switch to, say, Z shell, you're not going to have any problem whatsoever. But say if you were to switch from bash to something that isn't POSIX compliant, like fish, for example, or say you're on fish, which isn't POSIX compliant, and you want to go back to bash. This is the problem with not using POSIX compliance. You're going to have trouble actually moving between shells, and say you want to try out, say, I don't know, BSD, for example, and you don't have a new shell installed that actually support your non-POSIX compliant features, then you're going to have a problem when you start trying to run your scripts that are using things that just aren't supported. Your scripts are going to fail, and you're not really going to know why, and that's a problem. I did also mention that you can do this syntax right here. So this is actually supported. So if we want to do, say, $A plus $B, that basically is a arithmetic expansion. So similar to doing this syntax when you run a command, this is basically shell expansion. And like with this syntax is also available where you can just open up a subshell within a set of brackets. I'm pretty sure that that is POSIX compliant. I haven't found any information that that isn't. So if someone knows, then let me know because I'm not 100% sure. So basically the main thing about POSIX compliance is portability. So if you know you're never going to be on something that doesn't support your bash features or your Z shell features, or even your fish features, it's not really a problem. But if there is any chance that maybe you want to try something new out, maybe you want to try something like Z shell, you want to try, maybe you're on, I don't know, C shell and you want to try out bash. If you aren't using features that are supported by basically all shells, then you're going to have problems with your scripts and you're going to have a lot more difficulty actually like porting stuff over to those systems. Because if it's not POSIX compliant, it will be less portable. If you're only ever on bash, not a problem, as I said though. So really it's up to you how you want to write your scripts. I tend to only use POSIX features. If in any of my scripts I haven't, that's just because I wrote them a while ago and I didn't really know how to write it properly with just those POSIX features, because when you do try to look up this stuff, a lot of the time you would just be presented with, say, this is how you write it in bash, or this is how you write it in Z shell, and a lot of people will just use bash and shell interchangeably as if they are the same thing, where they are very, very different things, and making that distinction is actually very important. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over in this video. As I said, I'm not going over the file operators, at least in this video. I might do a separate video on them, just because I think there's about as many file operators as the operators that I already went over. So it'll probably just double the length of the video, so I don't feel like doing that today. So maybe in a separate video if you guys actually want to see that. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think. If I seem like I'm not talking as well as normally, it's because it is really, really hot today, and I didn't put the air conditioner on for some reason. So I might do that as soon as I finish recording, and yeah, maybe the rest of the week's also going to be really hot, so I'll probably do something about that. So hopefully the videos are good. We'll see how that goes, because it's going to be above 40 degrees Celsius. I think it's supposed to hit like 45 or something ridiculous later in the week, so we'll see how that goes. So if you want to see those videos when they come out, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below, because it'll really help the channel out. I might be at 250 by the time this goes up. We'll see, because as of the recording of this, I'm about 12 subs away, and I've been gaining about 5 a day. So I reckon I probably will be well past 250, on my way to 300 and on my way to 500. So any help will be really appreciated. Down below, I've got my links to my Discord, so if you want to chat with me, I've noticed that more people have been joining lately, which is awesome, because I actually do enjoy chatting with you guys. I've also got my library link, so if you want to see my videos on a platform that isn't YouTube, that'll be available down there. Also, my support links are available, so if you want to actually go support the channel, obviously you don't have to do that, but the option is there available for anyone who does feel like throwing some money at me. Up on that corner, I've got the playlist this video's in, so go check that out if you want to see other videos like this. Hopefully I'm less rambly in those, but we'll see how that goes. And I think that's pretty much everything. I always forget my Twitter. Twitter and Mastodon down below if you want to actually get video updates, because YouTube can never be trusted to push them to anyone. And now that's everything, so I'm out.